Tony Cornheiser, why? What are they getting us? Do you know something I don't know?
Love and support? How's that sound?
Yeah. I would say let's just phone it in, like we so often do. Let's just phone it in.
That's not the Christmas spirit. It's not the holiday spirit.
Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. Today's episode, college football playoff goes up against the NFL. Karl Anthony Towns returns to Minnesota, and Booker McFarland joins us for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with tonight's Thursday night game, a division game, the Denver Broncos at the LA Chargers. The Broncos are hot. They've won 4 games in a row. The Chargers are not. They've lost 3 out of 4. They got bulldozed by Tampa Bay on Sunday. So, Wilbon, how important is winning this game for Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers?
It's very important, Tony. And I'm not going to say it's a must because technically, I mean, they can lose and still make the playoffs. They still be in the hunt for a wild card spot. But they've lost 3 or 4. They're trending the wrong way. And they had, the first part of that season, the first particularly 10 games, and they got into a little groove. Their defense became the best, at least statistically, in the NFL for a while, although they gave up a 40 spot last week. But if they're going to right themselves, now's the time to do it. I realize it's difficult to go to Denver and do this, so they already have a game in hand, but they don't want to lose this game at home in Los Angeles. You need to, even though it's not a must game, win this game. You need to.
So if Denver wins this game, they're in the playoffs. It's plain and simple. So it's a big game for them.
They go in at 10-5.
If the Chargers win, they're 9-6. They can get in the playoffs if Miami and Indianapolis lose, I believe. But if they lose a game, they're 8-7. And in the playoffs, they get a little dicey at that point. So it's a big game for them. Mike, I find the Chargers a little disappointing, but I'm willing to look at myself and say maybe this is my fault. Maybe I put too much expectation on Jim Harbaugh. Because last year, the Chargers were 5-12, and they lost 8 of the last 9. So they hire Harbaugh, who had done so well last time he was in the NFL in San Francisco. And people like me automatically assume he's got Justin Herbert. They are going to be a playoff team. In fact, they're considerably better than they were last year.
Yeah.
Maybe the playoffs is too big a reach. Maybe it is coming out of a 5-12.
Well, Tony, I didn't write them into the playoffs this year. I thought they would need a year of transition with Harbaugh for him to. And by the way, he needed some transition. I know he's already done this. He did it damn well in San Francisco with the Niners, as you mentioned.
That's right.
But coming from Michigan, there was still going to be adjustments. There was still going to be some transition, even for Jim Harbaugh. So I just thought, okay, they'll get back to where they're 500 this year, and they're going to finish better than that.
Okay.
I thought, okay, next year is their time. But if they win this game,
I thought they'd be better.
Tony, it looks like they can get in and they can fulfill your pledge this year.
Yeah.
They still got a chance.
Well, I will just say this. I'll say this. The top of that division is really good. It's Kansas City, Denver, and the Chargers.
Yeah, it is real good.
The top of that division
just
is tough.
If
you win this game, this is a big win. Whoever wins this game, big win.
Absolutely. The college football playoffs start tomorrow night with Indiana at Notre Dame. But Saturday's games will be going head-to-head against the NFL. The Texans and Chiefs will kick off 1 hour into SMU's game against Penn State. And the Steelers and Ravens will take the field at 4:30 Eastern, just a half an hour after the start of Clemson, Texas. Now I'm going to be at DePaul Northwestern basketball, Tony, in that window. So I know you'll be watching. I'll be calling you, blowing up your phone to get scores.
Yep.
So the college playoff games going up against the NFL games. Big deal, little deal, no deal at all.
Big deal. Actually, a really big deal. Nobody ever beats the NFL. Golf gets out of the golf business when the NFL season starts. They just stop in September. Excuse me. The NFL drills baseball. Baseball rearranges their playoff schedule to not go head-to-head with the NFL. The NFL annihilates the NBA. The NBA was doing fine on Christmas Day for a few years. Somebody in the NFL office has said, let's crush them like ants, which they did. Now nobody even knows who's playing in the NBA on Christmas Day. But football on football crime, Mike, this is pretty new. There are spots in this country, as you well know, having covered college football, where college football will outrate the NFL. I would think that an Alabama-Georgia game would outrate a Falcons-Saints game, for example, especially this year, because those teams aren't very good. I certainly think that's possible. The point I want to make here, though, is the NFL isn't going after college football. The NFL has had this Saturday window for years.
Decades.
After Army-Navy.
Yeah.
After Army-Navy, you get to play. This is college football attempting to spit in the eye of the NFL. This is a different thing.
Yeah, I understand why college football did it, although they could have put all 4 games on Friday. They could have essentially declared Friday college football playoff holiday. And they could have gone 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 11:30, whatever. They could have done that, and Friday, tomorrow, nobody's working tomorrow. And it's just certainly not in the second half of the day. They could have done that. They decided to go with the traditional Saturday, which, as you mentioned accurately, the NFL's been there for decades. In college, I remember watching these games on Saturday in the last couple of weeks of the regular season, back when they had 14 games, they did this. So I think it's a big deal for another reason. You can watch all the games. I know you are the last person in America who refuses to have a second screen. Most of us,
don't have multiple
because
TVs.
even if you have an 80-inch screen, you can have your laptop, you have a handheld. Everybody watches more than one screen. Go to your local bar. You can watch everything. This is a bonanza. This is a big deal for that reason.
I got one set, but I'm going to start with the college games. But, Mike, I want to see how Patrick Mahomes does on a bad ankle. And I want to see Lamar Jackson against Pittsburgh. I mean, as much as I love college football, those games are really games I want to see. We move to the NBA and tonight's first meeting between the Knicks and the Timberwolves since they made that blockbuster trade in October that sent Karl Anthony Towns to New York and Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to Minnesota. The Knicks are 16-10. They sit third in the East. T-Wolves are 14-11, sit seventh in the West. Wilbon, how has this trade worked out for each team?
Tony, it's worked out. You're asking me. It worked out exactly as I thought it would work out, which is both teams would need some time to make adjustments to guys who are dominant figures in their new lineups. And so I thought, and I was shouted down by friends and sources who said, "Are you crazy?" I said, "No, this trade can be good for both teams." I understand that Karl Anthony Towns is not Bill Russell defensively. And it's going to cause some challenges for Coach Tibbs, a defensive stalwart as a coach, and that Knicks team when it comes to rim protection. But Karl Anthony Towns can score, and he's doing so. And the personality has to change. It'll change again if they get Mitchell Robinson back, okay. But they needed to make that damn deal, and they did. Now, for Minnesota, I know they started off slowly, but, Tony, they've won 6 of 7. And Julius Randle, I know it's not a perfect fit, but DiVincenzo in some ways has been a bigger surprise that he hasn't played up to the place that they thought he would. But they're coming along. I told you it was going to take 25 games. Guess what? It's 25 games. I think they're 14-11. This has played out the way I thought it would.
Okay. When this trade was made, I didn't understand it. I thought it would hurt both teams.
I know you did.
I'm not saying it has hurt both teams.
Okay.
But I'm going to go to some numbers here that are interesting. On this day last year, the Knicks were 15-11. They were 5th in the East. So they are marginally better than they were last year, maybe because of the trade.
Yeah.
The Timberwolves were 20-5. They had the best record in the NBA. So they are markedly worse at this point. But as you say, they've won 6 out of 7. Their defense in those 7 games has been very good.
Yes.
Maybe it took them a little longer to acclimate to a new roster. But DiVincenzo, we have to consider this because his shooting has been way off. Again, numbers. He's at 32% from 3. As a Knick, 40%. 26% from the corner 3. As a Knick, 40%. 35% from the field overall, 44% for the Knicks. So maybe he misses Jalen Brunson. I mean, the other guys, Towns has been great. Yeah. Towns grew up in the New York metropolitan area.
Towns
Maybe he's happy to go home.
He loves being home.
Yeah,
Talk to him.
And Randall has been fine. But one last thing, you mentioned the defense. At this point last year, the Knicks were 9th in the NBA. They are 16th now. So, we're not sure. Let's take a break. Coming up, does Indiana have a real shot of knocking off Notre Dame tomorrow night? We will ask Booger McFarland.
We're also going to ask him if SMU and Clemson can pull off upsets on Saturday. Tony, Minnesota's going to be okay. They're going to be all right. And by the way, they're not afraid to make deals.
We root for them.
They're not afraid to make a deal up there. They can still do that.
We root for assistant coach.
Pardon.
Let's dig into this weekend's college football playoff games with our great friend, ESPN NFL and college football analyst Booger McFarland, wearing a shirt from Preston Trails in Dallas. We're going to do college today. Let's start with this. First game of the playoffs is Friday night. Indiana at Notre Dame in an interstate battle. What separates these teams, Booger, and which of the two Indiana schools do you favor?
Well, I think what separates them is from a talent standpoint. Obviously, Notre Dame is a more talented team. I think this game comes down to the line of scrimmage. Notre Dame is one of the better running teams in college football, led by Jeremiah Love. Their offensive line is outstanding. They control the line of scrimmage. They're physical, but they're going against an Indiana team that's like number one in rush defense. So this is good on good. Whichever team can impose their will, I think is going to win this football game. We all know Kurt Cinetti is going to play the underdog card. He's going to say nobody believes in us. Nobody thinks we can win. And look for this game to be won in the trenches. I would favor Notre Dame because I just love their rushing attack. But if Indiana can stop the run and they can make Notre Dame quarterback Riley Leonard beat them throwing the football, there's an opportunity for an upset, guys.
It's a lot of Hoosiers for me in that game, maybe too many Hoosiers, Booger. The noon game Saturday, SMU at Penn State. Seems like a lot of people are framing this as a game Penn State ought to win, but Booger, if SMU wins this game, it doesn't seem like that huge an upset to me. What about to you?
Yeah, listen, here's the way I look at this. If SMU were to win this game, it's kind of like all three of us up here. Can we grow hair again? It's a possibility, but is it likely? Not really. None of us are ever going to grow hair again. Like, we're all going to be bald for the rest of our lives mostly. So that's the way I look at this game. There's an opportunity for SMU to win. They're going to have to play the perfect game because I think if you go back to the ACC championship game, guys, against Clemson, they had trouble with the physicality in the line of scrimmage. Well, we know Penn State's going to line up and run the football. They're going to be physical. Allen and Singleton and Warren, the tight end. Can SMU hold up in the trenches? That'll be the case. I don't think so, but it's going to be good to see Kevin Jennings, their do-it-all quarterback, who's from South Oak Cliff in Dallas, where my wife went to high school. It'll be good to see him against this team on a stage, and I think Rhett Lashley is going to give him every opportunity to make some plays.
Speaking of Clemson, which you just referred to, Clemson visits Texas, of course, in the late afternoon. Booger, can Clemson beat Texas in Austin? And if so, how would they do it?
Can they? Sure, they can do it. But again, they're going to have to do something that only Georgia did this year, which is beat Texas. And I'll tell you how Georgia did it. Georgia played Texas twice. And in each game, Texas did not get over 40 yards rushing. They averaged like 1.7 yards a rush. And they put the game in Quinn Ewers' hand. And Ewers, for whatever reason, he hasn't been the guy that we expected him to be all year long. He's starting to lob the ball in the air. He's not driving the passes. And Georgia beat Texas twice by stopping the run and making Quinn Ewers throw the football, and he couldn't do it. Now, if you're Clemson, can you do that? Can you stop the run with your front four? And can you get Cade Klubnik, your quarterback, and Phil Maffa, your running back, to kind of shorten the game? Run the football. Anytime your team is inferior from a talent standpoint, you want to shorten the game. Dabo Swinney is going to have to coach his behind off, and this is a great opportunity for little old Dabo to say, poor old Clemson, nobody believes in us. We can't win. We're going to Austin against Big Bad Texas. Dabo will have his team ready to play. I just don't know if they have the horses to beat Texas.
All right, the last game in the first round, the Saturday night game, is number 9 Tennessee at number 8 Ohio State in terms of seedings. That's as close as you can get. Do you see these teams as equals?
I see them just like you and Mike, Tony. I'll flip a coin, and whichever one it lands, you're my favorite guy for the day. Like that's how we look at Tennessee and Ohio State. I think Tennessee has a great opportunity to go into Columbus and win this football game, and here's why. Their defensive line goes 8, 9, 10 deep. They can dominate up front. They can put the game on Will Howard and force Will Howard to beat them, very similar the way Michigan did in the Michigan versus Ohio State game. And if they can do that, now can Will Howard drop back and throw the football 25 or 30 times and beat them? I don't know if they can do that, Tony. Everybody's talking about the weather. I don't think the weather is going to be a factor. If you've ever been to Knoxville in January or in December, it's cold in Knoxville. I think the weather is going to be mute when it comes to this. And here's the underlying sentiment in this game, guys. If Tennessee wins this game, imagine how tight things get for Ryan Day in Columbus. He would have lost to Michigan. He loses the playoff game at home. He will be able to turn coal into diamonds. His sphincter will be so tight. That game is going to come down to the fourth quarter. Tennessee's Dylan Sampson running the football against this Ohio State front. It's so many little subplots and little matchups I can't wait to watch. But that game, to me, is a true pick'em, guys.
Thank you very much, Booger, and wonderful shout out to your wife's high school. Good job out of you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you guys. Merry Christmas to you guys. You guys have a great holiday also.
You too. Let's take one last break. Still to come, UNLV pulls off a spectacular special teams play.
And Sammy Sosa and the Chicago Cubs have made up, we think.
And you are blown away by Sosa's stats, right?
Yes.
You went and reviewed them today.
I reviewed them again. No one has his power numbers. Not Bonds, not Mays, only Ruth.
Happy time, people. Happy 70th birthday on Saturday, Christine Marie Evert, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Chrissy made a huge splash at the U.S. Open in 1971 when it was still played at Forest Hills on grass. She was 16 at the time, making her major debut, showing the world her two-hand backhand. Chrissy got all the way to the semis, where she lost to Billie Jean King in a match on center court they could have sold 50,000 tickets to. She went on to win 18 majors, 6 U.S. Opens, 7 French Opens, 3 Wimbledons, 2 Australian Opens. Her rivalry with Martina Navratilova produced 14 different finals in majors. Along the way, they became great friends and supported each other as they publicly have gone through cancer treatments in recent years.
Tony, you and I have spent each a half century roughly covering sports and meeting all the greatest athletes in the world ever. And when I go to U.S. Open tennis, which I still do occasionally, and I'm there and Chris Everett's there, I'm completely intimidated. Yeah. And the two people I love listening to, and I don't take this for granted, Chris Everett and John McEnroe, when they are calling the action and I can listen to them, I can do that for hours and hours and hours on end.
Happy anniversary, Trae Young. On this day 7 years ago, the Oklahoma freshman had 26 points and 22 assists in a 105-68 win over Northwestern State. Those 22 assists tied the D1 record at the time. And Young became the first player in 2 decades to record at least 20 points and 20 assists in the same game. Young led college basketball that season in points per game, 27.1, and assists per game, 8.7. Young is now in his 7th season with the Atlanta Hawks. Twice he's been in the league's top 5 in points per game. He's been in the league's top 5 in assists 6 times. 3 times leading the league as he is right now. Wilbon, you hated him in college. Do you remember that?
Tony, I didn't hate him. I thought he was overstated and overrated. And I was loud, stupid, wrong. Wrong. Right now, the season he's having with that Atlanta team, no, he's a star, a justified one. He is gracious. I've run into him. He is not held against me, which he should. That I just didn't think he was going to be this kind of pro. Loud, stupid, wrong. He's great.
It should be on your license plate, loud, stupid, wrong. Happy trails to last night's Art of Sport LA Bowl for Cal. I got this prediction wrong, but UNLV had to resort to sublime trickery to turn the game in their favor. Down 10-7, facing 4th and 7 in the second quarter, UNLV faked a punt, letting Cal's line through, while punter Marshall Nichols pushed past the ball to gunner Cameron Oliver for what proved to be a 52-yard gain. The Runnin' Rebels scored 1 play later to make it 14-10 in the game. They won 24-13. If the fake looked like it could have elicited an ineligible man downfield penalty, there's none in college football if the pass is caught behind the line of scrimmage. Oh, and by the way, I got the other game right. JMU won the Boca Raton Bowl.
Isn't that the penalty that got Josh Allen's push pass disqualified? Wasn't that it? Wasn't it ineligible guy downfield? Yeah. All right, so you can't watch one and not be reminded of the other when Josh did his first.
Different rules. NFL, college, different. Big finish quickly. Sammy Sosa and the Cubs have made up He will be at the team's annual fan event. Your thoughts, Mr. Cub?
I'm relieved the Cubs and the fan base, everybody thought he needed to apologize for we know what that is. I'm relieved. Welcome back, Sammy. Big hug. The Washington Post reports Alex Ovechkin could return as soon as Sunday. That's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, broken bone in your leg and back in 5 weeks. That's pretty good. Cardinals third baseman Nolan Arenado reportedly rejected a trade to the Astros. Are you surprised?
Yes. Was he waiting on the Yankees? The Yankees haven't been any better or as good as the Astros the last 10 years. R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. What? Georgia Southern versus Sam Houston. Who you got?
Yeah, Sam Houston is a Texas name. This is a New Orleans Bowl. I'm going to take Georgia Southern. Last one, Lindsey Vonn skis in her first Super G in 6 years this weekend. Wish her well for us.
Of course, she's an all-time great and a big star, as big as there is in that industry. Welcome back, Lindsey Vonn.
We're out of time. We will try and do better the next time. Papa Jake Larson, happy 102nd birthday tomorrow.
Happy indeed. I'm Mike Wilbon. Happy holidays, knuckleheads. We're off until
Lamar Jackson can get past the Steelers this weekend. Plus, the sleeper team heading into the first round of the college football playoff. But we're going to start here. Week 16 of the NFL tonight. It features rivals from the AFC West. The Chargers hosting the Broncos. Denver right now is rolling. Winners of 4 straight entering the night. They can clinch a playoff spot for the first time since 2015 with the win. Chargers won the first meeting back in Week 6 in Denver, but they've lost back-to-back games coming into this one. They can inch closer to a playoff spot with the win, but they will need losses by the Colts and Dolphins on Sunday. And on the scene at SoFi Stadium is NFL reporter Lindsay Thiry. She joins us now. Lindsay, Justin Herbert is dealing with an ankle sprain he suffered in Week 14. How's he feeling ahead of tonight's game?
Kevin, it's a quick turnaround for Justin Herbert, playing on that ankle only 4 days after the last game. So I asked him if he could put a percentage on his recovery. Herbert thought about it for a minute and told me, no, I can't tell you that. But I can tell you that it is feeling better. It feels better now than it did a week ago. And as long as I'm moving in that direction, that is what's most important. Throughout the practice week, Herbert wore a different brace. He tested a new one that fits on the outside of his shoe and then is taped up. He says it provides more stability for his cuts and his dropbacks. He is expected to wear that tonight. And a very important note, both Herbert and his offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, have acknowledged that in the past 2 games, they've had to alter the game plan to accommodate for his ankle. And that could be key again tonight as they face a Broncos defense that leads the NFL in sacks. Herbert tells me he understands that he has to be smart with the football and that sometimes could mean throwing it away rather than taking a sack or potentially turning it over.
Yeah,
Kevin?
Keep in mind, this season, Herbert ranks 31st in QBR against man coverage with that Broncos D, employing man coverage at the 3rd highest rate in the league. Lindsay Thiry reporting live from L.A. Our quarterback, Dan Orlovsky, as well as our betting analyst, Joe Fortenbaugh, with us here as we get ready for a pretty good matchup in the AFC West here. And when you look at the Broncos led by Bo Nix, the rookie quarterback, how do they get this offense going tonight?
If I said to you that Bo Nix is one of the best red zone quarterbacks in all of football, that would be accurate. Not just red zone young quarterbacks, all in all, 21 touchdowns this year down in the red zone, 1 turnover. And that's really where Sean Payton gets his 1, most creative, and 2, most aggressive. They take their slot receivers one side, double tight ends another side. They fake the bubble screen down to the bottom. The tight ends run a little bit of a widened seam. Everybody's got vision eyes, zone defense. Guess what the Chargers play down in the red zone? Zone defense. Look for the tight ends huge tonight in early downs. The second thing is they'll get into the rave in the NFL. They're 4-by-1 formation down in the red zone. They'll get motion to it. I love so many elements of this. Number 1, pull the backside guard, play fake. Number 2, you half roll the quarterback. And then 3 count on that screen. 1, 2, 3 block and late leak. That's the second time they've scored on that play this year. To a tight end. Look for them tonight against that Chargers defense. And then on those 3rd downs in the red zone is when the aggression turns up. It's 3rd and 6, so the defensive back is going to sit at 6 yards. Let's double move them. Let's not throw a 6-yard route. Let's go for a touchdown. Go for the jugular. That's Sean Payton's MO. The Chargers defense is really good. I think the tight ends on early downs, when they're extra creative, and then on 3rd down, look for them to be very aggressive, not trying to get first downs, but touchdowns.
What action do you like in this game, Joe?
Money's been coming in on the under. It was 42.5. It's not on the 41.5. I would follow suit. I would play this to be a lower scoring game. Two factors you want to look at. With Denver number 1 this season, they've played 4 games against top 10 defenses. 4 games. They're 0-4 in those 4 games, scoring just 14 points per game. Chargers are 8th in defensive EPA. Now, on the other side, it's the Chargers. Offensively, look at what they did the first 11 games of the season. They went over 17 points in 8 of those 11 games. They lost J.K. Dobbins, and since then, it has been a different offense. They haven't topped 17 points in any of those 3 games. Herbert's playing injured. Classic Thursday night rock fight under 41.5 points.
Rock fight you mentioned, right? The unders hit in 9 Chargers games. That is second most in the NFL. Let's stay in the AFC West. We've got an update on Patrick Mahomes' high ankle sprain. The Chiefs star took part in a full practice today ahead of Saturday's game against the Texans at Arrowhead. It's the 3rd straight day he practiced with the team. Coming off that ankle injury in the 4th quarter of Sunday's win over the Browns, Carson Wentz came in and replaced him. Senior NFL insider Adam Schefter is with us now. Shefty, what's the latest update on Mahomes' status here heading into Saturday's game against the Texans?
Kevin, not only did Patrick Mahomes practice in full all week long, but when the Chiefs released their final injury report of the week, Patrick Mahomes wasn't even on there with an injury designation, which means he has been cleared to go for Saturday's game against the Houston Texans. No matter how hobbled he was against the Cleveland Browns, no matter how much they taped up his ankle, no matter how limited he might be, he is expecting to be out there as the Chiefs try to lock up the number 1 seed in the AFC. He has played through this type of injury before in the playoffs. He said this one wasn't as bad, and right now he is expected to start against the Texans on Saturday.
He's not the only big-name star dealing with an injury heading into some critical Saturday games. Let's go get an update here, starting with Steelers defensive star T.J. Watt.
Also off the injury report, also not healthy, but also expected to play even through the injury, even though he's not at full strength. This is the type of injury that would have sidelined other players probably for multiple games, but not TJ Watt. He is expected to be out there in a huge AFC North matchup. The question will be whether the Ravens have Rashad Bateman, who suffered a foot injury during practice, was spotted today during the open session in a walking boot. My understanding is he has a realistic chance to play. The Ravens have not given up hope on the idea that Bateman will be out there. We'll see if he can make it back for Saturday's game. Meanwhile, it looks like there's a real possibility that Saints running back Alvin Kamara will be out for the remainder of the season. Suffered a groin injury